G'day everyone and welcome to another episode of Practical Powerlifting. In this episode, I get to speak with head coach and owner of Apex Strength, Tyler Seabrook. Tyler is a coach that has been around the traps for a very long time, very experienced. And one thing I've spoken about in a number of other episodes is the short lifespan of the average powerlifter. But Tyler is someone that, like I said, has been around for a long time, has proven his passion, commitment and energy to powerlifting, involved himself in a number of different federations. And so he has a lot of great insights to share with us all. He also has experience both in powerlifting and bodybuilding. And so he shares a lot about the training methodologies and the lessons that he's learned from a more bodybuilding focused or a specifically bodybuilding focused period of his training career that he's able to apply both to his own training and to that of his clients. One thing that I really liked that he spoke about was community. And community is often parroted by many powerlifting personalities. And when I think of community, I think of my local community. I think of my members in my gym, the people that I coach. Tyler actually talks about community in a much broader sense, the broader powerlifting community, the interaction of federations, how somebody who is powerlifting feels part of a national body or even an international body. And I thought that was really interesting. It's also important to note that this episode was recorded on the 20th of October. So this was before Tony Reinwith competed at the SPD Cup Australia, where he eventually won. And so there's a little bit of discussion about what to expect before the SPD Cup. But of course, we know the results of that now. He's the SPD Cup champion. So with that said, I hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks. We were talking about how quickly like you can progress as a coach, and like not necessarily quickly, but you forget that that things are changing and you are evolving. It's just like you're just stuck in the machine, and sometimes you do need to pause and look back and think, whoa, I've actually improved a lot as a coach and I've changed my mind on things. And I don't know about if you get this, but sometimes I look at programs I wrote like 3 years ago. I'm like, I wrote that? Well, like, that almost looks so different to what I'm doing now. Is that something you're getting as well?
Yeah, look, I think one of the best things I ever heard was if you're happy with your programming from like a few years ago, then you're doing something wrong.
Mm.
So it's like it's like constantly evolving and improving, and yeah, it's like it's never ending. And I always say this, that it's arrogant to think that you know everything, and it's just a constant learning experience being a coach.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like that's actually one thing I wanted to ask you about is you are somewhat unique in some sense as a coach in that you have this experience in bodybuilding as well. A lot of powerlifting coaches don't have that. There are many powerlifting coaches that do dabble on the dark side, but do you think that's changed your approach to powerlifting or just generally coaching your clients as well now?
Definitely. I became a lot more conscious of other facets of performance because of bodybuilding. I became a lot more aware of the negatives of that sport because we kind of fantasized bodybuilding because of all the greats, whether it's Ronnie Coleman, your Arnolds, your Jay Cutlers, especially old school bodybuilders, right? And there's an element of it that I love, and I'll talk about that, which is how hard they train and how fun they make training look. But what you don't see, particularly on the natty side of bodybuilding, is strategic starvation, is how I explain it to people. And it becomes a full-time job and you got to be so meticulous about everything you do. And that can become dangerous and obsessive. And I had a bunch of things I got obsessive about because of bodybuilding. And like anyone who knows me, I'm the last person to have an eating disorder or a problem in that sense. But God damn, like that really seeps in when you really fixate on a target, and you're told that it takes 100% of your everything to achieve that target, which is like your pro card, for example, where I now have the ability to have the comparison to powerlifting. And it really made me appreciate powerlifting way more than I ever did before, because I was like, wow, this sport is so like it's healthy for people. Even at the highest of end of athletes, they still can be quite healthy in terms of how they eat. Their life outside of powerlifting. So the ability to be like a high level athlete or get really strong, but also have a really good life balance. And so that's my unique perspective because I've done both sports and I have a lot of respect for anyone who does bodybuilding. It's a very, very intense and difficult sport. The posing is like a whole nother sport in itself. So a lot of respect, but it's definitely, there's a lot of negatives as well when it comes to bodybuilding.
Would you say that bodybuilding, just because it requires so much more discipline, like, are you saying that, yeah, bodybuilding, I suppose, requires more discipline than powerlifting, and it kind of eats into your daily life more than what powerlifting does, I suppose?
Yeah, I think like it does require more of you because of the elements of the posing, how lean you have to get. And then you also got to think of the negatives it creates. So strategic starvation also means you're constantly uncomfortable. You're freezing cold when it's hot. All these negatives that, if I was to give you the equivalent for powerlifting, the worst negative would probably be like, when your central nervous system is really fried and you can't sleep, or you run really hot. Like that happens to me when I come into comps where I'm like trying to sleep and I'm burning up, like I'm so hot. And then like that's just central nervous system fatigue. You'll have sessions where you feel really run down, but then some sessions you feel great, even though you're under a lot of fatigue. So the negatives of powerlifting are far less and far lower, and it encourages a better balance in life for sure. But yes, it does take more from your bodybuilding than powerlifting does. But that's why I grew a more appreciation for powerlifting after bodybuilding, because I was like, this is so cool that we can, have such an awesome community, enjoy the training, feel good when you train, get to eat a lot of food still. And it's a positive thing that you're eating a lot of food, so it's like it reinforces a lot of positive behaviors, I guess you could say. But yeah, that would probably summarize it really well.
Just while we're on this, I'm a powerlifting coach that doesn't have experience in bodybuilding. What kind of like lessons or influences do you think your experience in bodybuilding has had on you that I could take away, or that other powerlifting coaches that don't have experiences could kind of learn from you? Like if you've got
Yes.
a powerlifting client who's exclusively powerlifting, like they don't really care for bodybuilding, they're not so interested in aesthetics personally, they just really want to get strong and they want to compete and they want to be competitive and maybe go to nationals, blah, 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 blah. Are there things that you're applying to them that you've learned from your bodybuilding experiences?
Yes. So one in particular would be nutrition, in the way of being careful about counting calories and how strict you are on your nutrition. So some athletes, it's not ideal for them to count calories because they can become obsessive about whether it's their weight, their scale weights. So sometimes nutrition has to be, I guess, applied in a different way to different athletes. Like if you've got someone who is going to Worlds and they need to make weights, sure, you got to be that little bit more strict and hard on them about their nutrition versus someone who's just going to a local meet and they might be a little bit overweight or whatever, but it's like, it's okay to go into the other weight class. It's okay not to count calories. Sure, we want to look at our protein and carbohydrates and things for performance, but having a better balance of not everyone has to count calories. And it's unique to every athlete or even just client as to what you apply for them. And I've definitely learned that from bodybuilding, that it can be dangerous on how hard you are, like, or how hard you apply nutrition to a client.
I find that interesting because a lot of coaches, uh, especially a lot of people that started as strength or bodybuilding or powerlifting coaches who didn't really do nutrition and then they transitioned to offering nutrition coaching, a lot of them do apply calorie counting as like a blanket approach to nutrition coaching. Like they say, okay, offering nutrition coaching. And I mean, I don't see it as much anymore, and I think things have changed. I'd be curious to know what your opinion is, but I feel like 5, 8, 10 years ago, it was very common to see coaches say things like that they offer macro coaching, as if like that was like macro allotment was like the only approach that they knew. Whereas you're specifically saying that counting calories isn't for everyone.
Yeah, correct. Because you can, there's like tools you can use. So, for example, part of like counting calories is long term, it becomes more of an issue, but doesn't mean you don't go, all right, this week we're going to count calories for 1 week only, just to see where you're at. We sort of look at the macro balance, the micronutrients as well. particularly their fiber, and have a look at how they are, make some tweaks, and then they don't have to go back to counting. Like, and once you get good at that, like I recently did that experiment where I haven't counted calories for many months. And then I just was like, I think I'm eating about 3,200 calories. I was eating about 3,250. So I was that close to knowing what I was eating in total calories, but my macro split was a bit off, where I was eating a little bit too much fats and a little under on carbohydrates. So I knew, okay, all I did was tweak a few ingredients in my meals I was having to make that balance work better. So that way I can get the most out of my performance, but also avoid the negatives of constantly counting calories. To your question in regards to like the macro advice from coaches, look, I definitely, like all of us, we start out just training our friends and giving them a basic bitch program. Oh yeah, do this, like you get stronger, right? And then over the years, so 8 years now, 10 years I've almost been coaching for, you sort of develop how important it is for all performance aspects. So it starts out as training, but then it becomes, nutrition's also important. Your sleep is important. Your resilience, mind and body, both is important. So it sort of developed as a coach into those things, but how you apply them to each individual has to be, I guess, unique.
You mentioned, the importance of like nutrition, sleep, resilience of mind, like mentality and stuff. Has that come about? Like, what caused that to come about in your coaching philosophy? Like, how are you applying? And then I guess the second question on that is, how are you applying that? How do you help your clients with sleep or with mentality or things that are a bit more abstract, I suppose?
Yeah, I guess like, the resilience aspect would be like making sure someone's strong, not just in a perfect position. So it's important to work on your stability and mobility outside of just strength training and barbell movement. And that's a little bit controversial because some people aren't a fan of like mobility, for example, for powerlifters, or they think stability is a waste of time. In my experience, that's how you get longevity in your career. You know, not everyone's body works perfectly. You have things happen like your shoulders, like a shoulder will fall to bits where the stability of it's gone to shit, and you have to work on that. And if you don't, you'll end up injured or just constantly have niggles in that area. There's some people who their body just works perfectly and everything's super stable. You can see it in the athlete. When I see athletes who just they move a weight and make it look easy, nothing break down, no knee galvis, like everything's like their bar path's perfect throughout the entirety of the lifts. Their bracing's really solid, like their position and center of mass is really good, their toe pressure, like everything's perfect. But most people aren't that and require other elements, whether it is stability work, whether it is the mobility because their position's not right. So that's definitely something that's developed, in my programming in particular, outside of just strength training. The resilience aspects would definitely be just like accountability, managing expectations, like really having those conversations prior to competing, being I always have this conversation with beginners because how like a beginner, they're going to progress. You could give them any program. You could give them those crazy ass Russian programs or a basic bitch linear program and they're going to progress. Eventually they won't. And so you need to have that conversation with your client to be like, hey, it's not linear in terms of getting stronger. You've got to be okay at some point that you're going to get stuck because of hypothetically a weakness or pain or a niggle, and it's going to set you back, or your techniques, we have to pull that back and rebuild it and change it, which means you've got to take a step back to take a step forward. So having those conversations with your clients is really important, and it builds that resilience for the client as well, which obviously helps them get through those tough periods.
I love what you're saying here. You've mentioned a couple of times the word conversation, as in you're literally talking to clients and mentally setting them up. I think one of the things, like one of my big, I guess, rocks of coaching is exactly what you're discussing now, which is having these conversations. I often refer to coaching as like a mentorship or a mentoring setup where you've got someone who wants to go on the path and you've already been on the path. And so it's like, I'm walking you through this forest that is lifting that I've been through before. I've walked it myself, and I've walked hundreds of other people through this forest before. And you're walking in blind, so I'm going to guide you along the process. So it's like a mentorship, which is why I'm really big on not providing programs for people just on its own. So, I'm sure you get this, and maybe you do this as well. And there's nothing wrong with this on its own. It's just not my approach, where people will say, "Hey, can you write me a program?" Or I've had, especially when it's your mates, write me a program. I'm like, I'm not going to write you a program, because it's not about just the numbers on a sheet, man. Like, you need to actually be guided through the whole process, shown how to do the exercises, someone to address the issues when they come up, to troubleshoot, to like have these conversations about mentality and like, okay, your approach and what to expect and blah blah blah. Like, to me, that's what a coaching service is. It's much more than just download my program for $19.99 and then good luck, because like you said, any program will do for a lot of people. Like, for a long time, almost any program will do.
Particularly for beginners, but anyone intermediate or high level, it's not going to work for them. Eventually something will catch up with them, and they need like to be more specific. You could say. Yeah, I mean, I haven't even considered that for myself, but you're right. Like, every person I coach, I'm in contact with to some degree. Obviously, there's different tiers with my coaching, but you know, for the higher level, I'm doing video reviews on every exercise they do across a whole week. And then on a lower tier, I might speak to them a couple of times a week in person or online, like once a week or once a month, depending on the tier. So you're right. Like, it's all encompassing. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of just throwing someone a program, because you know why? I know it won't work. I know they won't stick to it. I know they won't be able to apply it. They'll have so many questions. They'll be like, how do I do this? Like, it could have a video on how to do it, and they'll still be like, I don't understand.
And they'll
Like,
still get it wrong.
yeah. Yeah. So you're right. Like, it's all encompassing, and it requires other, I guess, just areas of communication. It's not just words or numbers on a sheet that's going to get you strong. All right. Um, and that's, where community comes into things as well. Community is so important for the progress of powerlifting or any sport, I could imagine.
That's a great segue, because I wanted to talk a little bit about Apex. But before that, I did want to mention, because I'll ask you, because you did mention, you've been coaching for, 10 years now. What were your
Mm.
early days of coaching like? Were you working in a gym? Were you just helping out friends, like you said? Like, what did that look like? And then when was the transition to opening up Apex in your coaching career?
Yeah, I think it was, I think I've actually heard you say this before, but it always starts out with your friends. So it was just people I knew, friends. There was a few people from my Genesis gym I used to train at when I first started training. I trained at a Genesis. I had a couple of people who I helped, and actually had like a paid client out of there, which is pretty crazy, because it was like I had no like experience, or like I was obviously just a bit stronger than them, and they wanted to know how to get stronger. So it starts out just, yeah, helping out your friends. Majority of the times they're not paying, you're just like giving them programs. And that was definitely my first learning experience, that giving someone a program and then walking away doesn't work. And it's not long term in that sense. And that slowly developed into having my first online clients who I had regular communication with and worked with, and actually like worked with them in person. I purposely was like, hey, come train with me. I want to work on your deadlift, or I want to work on this. And that transitioned into coaching more people. Obviously, I started powerlifting or not obvious, people who don't know me, I started powerlifting in 2016. What year did you start powerlifting?
2013, man.
2013. So you've been in the game a bit longer. So 2016, started powerlifting. 2017, I had my first, like, I guess, like, paying clients. Started sort of working out of Renegade MMA with my mate Anthony, who most of you will know. We basically just, yeah, like just powerlifters exclusively almost at that point. And then we decided, hey, let's open a gym. And then in 2018, I think it was Australia Day 2018, we opened Apex Strength in Coburg North, in just like a tiny little studio. Started small, you know, didn't like really have to make money to enjoy it. It was one of those beautiful things where we were able to do it, and it wasn't a big deal that we didn't make money. If that makes sense.
It was
And
like low
I think that's
pressure, I
pretty.
suppose, because it was such a small place, like
Yeah,
low
small
overhead,
place.
low
Obviously, our
stakes.
reach was like relatively small as well, and it was like we're just so passionate about coaching and lifting that it was fine. And then that turned into Apex, what it is now, which is obviously a far bigger space, with a lot more clients and a lot bigger community than before, obviously. So, and here we are. So it's in 8 years in January that we've opened Apex. So all of a sudden, all those years have gone by. And I'm pretty sure you were maybe a year before us,
About
was it?
that, yeah, April, maybe 9 months prior, actually. So really, pretty almost same time, I would say. Well, in when you go as long as we have, it's basically the same time, same era.
Yeah, and I remember when you started the gym, and we were like, "Oh, we want to do that." So we end up doing it just after you, and yeah, it's been a really cool journey.
Awesome, man. And so, how did having the gym space kind of like influence your coaching? And I want to hear a little bit about what you said before about community and how important that is. And my next question on that is like, how do you build that community? How do you foster that community? And how come you think community is so important to getting good at lifting?
Unless you are a very, very motivated person, one of those people who can train hard in a garage gym year round, which is a rarity. Most people can't do that. You won't be able to get through the hard weeks and months of training. There will be a point where you are not motivated. Community is what gets you rocking up every week. So, because there's one thing to be motivated, like anyone can train when they're motivated. That's why you look at New Year's resolutionists, right? Where they're just like January, February, half the country is in a gym training. And then by March, you've got basically the 5% that made it through, and everyone else drops off. And a big part of that, yeah, is community. And, you want to catch up with people. And also then they motivate you to train harder. They motivate you to train. So community, I've definitely recognized as to how important it's become. And that's, you can look at that at Apex, right? But look at it as a bigger scale. Have a look at the progress of Australian athletes since the emergence of APA and APL. Those two federations have created an environment in which they've made powerlifting more enjoyable for everyone. They've made events better and bigger than ever before. And all of a sudden, everyone's progressing, like in every facet, male, female, every weight category. All the records are getting broken. So we just had, I think, our best nationals at IPF Opens that we've ever had, or the most like success we've ever had, I guess you could say. I'm seeing the same thing with APL. They just held a strength expo, which really hasn't been done. There's only been like fitness expos, and to see all the strength sports come together and run an event that had literally thousands of people there was like, wow, this is really, really cool. And it just makes athletes flourish because they have that community around them and motivation around them. So, because all the athletes have always been there, but
Mm.
yet the progress hasn't. And as you know, like powerlifting's been particularly scattered in Australia since really the PA era, the APU era. So even prior to APL, obviously the GPCs and all these different periods of time. So I just think it's in a really good spot, and it really represents how community can help everything and everyone grow.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I hadn't actually thought about like that because when you mention community, of course, my mind goes straight to like the small local community, like your gym, and but you're which you're also referring to, but you're also expanding on the definition and meaning the broader powerlifting community, feeling like you're part of a bigger picture, like, and that's actually that makes a lot of sense to me because like I think about, um, like in all the travel I've done, I know you've done a lot of travel too. It's like when you go overseas and you find a gym that has like, as especially for myself, IPF stuff, IPF gyms, so to speak. you suddenly feel like, okay, this is a place where I can just train properly and I know what I'm getting myself into. Like if you find their Google listing or you find their Instagram and you see that it's a specifically IPF gym, it's like suddenly, and I'm not even saying a powerlifting gym, I'm saying like an IPF gym. That actually makes you feel like you're part of something bigger, makes you realize you're actually part of this. And so I guess it's kind of what you're saying. It's like even in Australia, having a broader powerlifting community that's united, which we're very happy about, much more united than it has been in the past, actually motivates the individual to train harder.
Yeah. Yeah. It creates an environment where people can flourish. And it's proven in the results in the last few years, and obviously there's other variables, like something we can talk about is the progression in the standard of coaching has come a long way in the 8 to 10 years that we've been in the game. Yeah, it went from your 10s, your 8s, your 6s, your 5s, your doubles, and then compete into a lot more strategy, being far more specific for the individual. People talk about primer days and practicing more powerful and doing more singles, obviously tempo work, the frequencies in which people are squatting, benching, and deadlifting. You're hearing about high-level athletes. What's the Polish girl's name who's just dominating all
Agata.
Agatha, yeah. It's like how she's doing like 6 days of like powerlifting every week, and everyone's like, how the hell is she recovering from that? So it's like it's cool to see multiple athletes at high level get strong in all different ways. There's not just one way. And it progressed to another level where we're seeing like crazy totals being done in whether it's the 83s, the 93s, or even in the untested worlds like your Coltons, who is probably going to total 1,300, which who would have thought that could have been possible even just a year ago? And now, it's like anything's possible in that sense. So you never say never.
You've been around long enough to see these kinds of trends, and I think if you're a young coach now getting into it, you're at that stage, maybe someone's listening to this, they're coaching their friends, they're writing programs for their friends, they're downloading programs online, and they're trying to learn. And it can be very overwhelming because there's one coach on there that screams that daily undulating periodization is the best way, and someone else is screaming that linear periodization is the way, and another person says you have to be doing primer days, as you mentioned, and someone else is screaming that you don't have to be, and someone else is saying this, someone else is saying that, and all of these people have very good resumes, good client rosters, success at nationals and international comps, and so it can be very overwhelming as someone who's trying to learn as to like, what should I be doing? Like, what are the best approaches, I suppose? And as you kind of referenced, over the years, we've seen trends. We see periods where people are squatting every day and people are doing all these kinds of different protocols. I want to ask you, what does your system look like? What is your coaching systems? What are the things that you lean on, or where are your biases in the sense of like, what are the things that you like and really believe in? And what do you think of this, what is basically like a smattering of just different protocols?
Yeah, I think I've like touched on it a little bit, but linear progression is definitely MO. Not to say undulated doesn't work, but I really like the momentum you can build off linear progression. I also do things like preemptive deloads. I don't wait till the athlete's falling apart. I've recognized trends with most human beings, like can handle so many weeks of training before their body really starts to deteriorate. And that can be just they feel really run down, which means then their training quality goes to shit, their technique breaks down, things like that, which happens when our central nervous system's really fatigued. So preemptive deloads is definitely a style of mine. Percentage backdowns. I'm not a big fan of like doing, like people get like 5x5s or like 7 RPE, and it's like there's no way by that fifth set it's gonna still be a 7 RPE. It's gonna become an 8.5 RPE, maybe a 9, depending on the individual athlete, how heavy they are, how much they're lifting, how many carbohydrates they've eaten, how was their sleep that day. So things like percentage backdowns allows you to maintain an RPE and factor in that fatigue by those final sets. I noticed a lot of coaches don't do that. So I guess that's another unique one from, like, I'm sure other coaches do it, of course, but it's definitely my style, I could say. And then another big one is also working on one's stability and mobility, which is basically part of any client's program to some degree. Some clients don't need as much, other clients need more, depending on their weaknesses, depending on, if their external rotations shit, then they need external rotation work. You know what I mean? It's like, that's when it becomes more unique to the individual as well. Definitely, one program won't get everyone strong, and the same program won't get that person strong. It has to constantly evolve as you get stronger. Then you come across new problems. So you can't expect just to repeat the same program and continually expect the same result. That's so definitely being individual to everybody, and that programming has to continually progress with the athlete.
You mentioned a couple of times now stability, mobility. What does that mean to you, and like how are you actually applying that? Like, are you giving people specific drills? Are you like picking up on their technique when they're doing bench press and identifying, hey, your shoulder looks unstable to me, we're going to do this? Or do you wait until someone's reporting, hey, I'm feeling pain? How much of a role are you playing as a strength coach in like managing an athlete's physical health and body? Or are you referring out and you're saying, no, just go to my osteo, go to my physio, they're great, they'll report back to me? Again, I've got the beginner coach in mind or a lifter in mind, where they might not be sure how much they can kind of be involving themselves in a lifter's like well-being, I suppose.
Pain is definitely a really solid indicator, because we are very, very good at compensating for problems until there's nowhere to go. So sometimes it requires pain to present before we realize there is an issue. One of the reasons we do unilateral work is to identify weaknesses and or stability issues. So once you do identify that issue, if, say, hypothetically, I identify it, then I'll apply what I think and what I've learned over the last 10 years to help the athlete. If it's out of my league, then I'll pass that on to either their physio or osteo, or who I recommend osteo or physio to go see. So coaching is a team, and it requires the team to get someone onto the platform. So, I work closely with my partner, who's a remedial therapist, and she's learned a lot about the body in just the studying and everything she had to do for that, and obviously the treatment in which she has to do. So I'll lean on her for her knowledge. And then also I have my own osteo. I'll lean on him for his knowledge. So I definitely will lean on professionals in their respective fields, but then also apply what I've learned anecdotally, which all coaches really have to do, because we can't just rely on finding a study for every little problem. So we apply what we've learned and hopefully fix the problems that we come across with athletes. And generally speaking, there is problems. It's like very rare you come across someone where everything just works, they never have pain, and they get super strong from every program you give them. It's like usually there's some kind of like I guess dilemma, adversity, I guess is a good word for it. I learned this the hard way when I started powerlifting. Within a year or two, I had a lot of pain and a lot of problems. And it was very frustrating to me, because I was like watching Anthony like do a ridiculous amount of volume and train 5 days a week and just get stronger and not have any issues. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, and I was like 23. So it wasn't like I was, I was young, right? And then I quickly realized that it's not just about barbell movements, but it's also, about one's stability and mobility as well. Like, you have to be able to be in a good position and not be forcing the body into that position. And also the breakdown of whether it's, your hips or your shoulder. Like you see people, they fall out of position. That's typically a good sign that says there is a weakness, or that their bar path isn't right. And so then you got to go in and identify where the problem's coming from. Is it a stability issue, or is it an execution issue? So you got to like dive into where the problem's coming from. And that's why I'm saying that it's like, it's not just give someone barbell movements to get strong, there's also these other variables in strength.
Speaking of trends, there was a trend a while ago. I'm talking, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. I remember I knew a few people doing this where they really took the idea that specificity is king to an extreme. I've got someone specific in my mind from Queensland who was a very good lifter in Australia, doesn't lift anymore, who basically only did SBDs. Like he only squatted, he only bench pressed, he only deadlifted, and didn't waste his time doing accessories or supplementary lifts. It sounds like what you're saying is, um, accessories or supplementary lifts or other drills, activation, all these kinds of things, they can have a like health promoting benefit. Like it's not like you're doing, like, for example, what you're saying, at least what I'm interpreting, is you're not doing, possibly you're not doing lunges to build up your leg strength so much that you're going to squat 250 kilos, as much as you might be doing it to keep your hips square and balanced and identify issues. And it's more of like a well-being rehab prehab style. Sometimes it can be a rehab prehab style exercise rather than a hypertrophy or a pure strength exercise.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong. Like if I give someone a split squat, the main goal would be the hypertrophy of that movement, but an added benefit of doing unilateral work is identifying weaknesses. And yes, you are forced to work on a little bit more stability than maybe before. But I mean, it depends how you're executing it as well. And like I said, it's not that everyone needs it. It has to be individual to the athlete or the client. Some people, like I said, they're super stable when they lift. Everything works as it should. Everything, like their shoulders are stable, their hips are stable, and then other people it's just not. And and it's the hard truth to swallow. And then once you show them though, it's like kind of like a blows their mind in the sense of like, oh my god, I can't believe like that's why I was having this problem or this technique breakdown or whatever the issue is. um you obviously it's just it's not all about barbell movements, it's also about these other areas. And your example, which I've seen examples of that as well, where people would purely just do barbell movements. And for some people that works, and usually it works to a degree where I still think, oh, they maybe could have got stronger by just doing a few drills, before training, and you don't have to spend a ridiculous amount of time doing these things. It can be literally a superset while you're warming up for squats. So that way you're not spending too much time doing these things as well, because they are the more boring, not fun things to do. Everyone just wants to squat heavy, bench heavy, deadlift. So unfortunately, there is other areas of performance that you have to target. And if you want to be a high level athlete, that's just what it requires.
I love how you finish that. If you want to be a high level athlete, that's just what it requires. And it's very easy to forget that as a powerlifter, you're an athlete and you have to be athletic, and you don't necessarily need to be able to do the splits or to, run a 5 minute mile, but being generally well looked after, taking care of the machine that you are, like you said, doing those drills and keeping your body healthy is very important. Another thing you mentioned as well before was leaning on others. You mentioned your partner, leaning on her knowledge, leaning on your osteo. And for a lot of young coaches, they find that hard because they want to know it all. They want to be able to provide all the support. But as you said, it kind of takes a village. Or I don't think those were your words, but it kind of takes a team. And understanding your limitations, I think, is so important if you're a coach. Realizing, like personally, I don't know a lot about nutrition, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. And you need to sort your fucking nutrition out. So go speak to so and so, or and being able to lean on those networks around you lean on people that have those skill set, I think is very important. Which I just wanted to point that out as something that you'd mentioned.
Yeah, I can get it. Like from beginner coaches, there's like that. I guess maybe a little bit of ego in there, and maybe they also want to be seen as the one to get the client from A to B. So there's that aspect as well. But yeah, generally speaking, it does take a village. At points, like not all the time. Don't get me wrong. For the majority of the time, my programming or my advice is the main thing, say helping a client. But you'll come across a problem like you just said where it's like it's too complex or I'm unsure. Like I can kind of like estimate like what I think, but I'm like, hey, I think it'd be best to fast track the progress, go see your osteo or physio, and they'll give you something very specific and also in a linear way where they can apply it to get harder as you get better at that thing, because the difficulty of, say, you can't do the really difficult drills straight away. You have to build up to that. So they can be very specific about that problem, where it maybe I can only be a little bit more broad about the problem because I'm not a physio, I'm not an osteo. But then there's some problems that I'm like, yep, this is the problem. Do this to apply to fix the problem, and we get through that problem. So it's, depending on individual issue.
You said that for some lifters, it all just goes smoothly. Their bodies just work. They do heaps of volume. They get stronger. They don't have no issues. And then for a lot of people, it's not like that. Why
That
do you think that is? Are there things that you can identify early on where you can tell that it's just going to be harder for some people? And I guess, is your approach different to someone amongst, and of course it's going to be different amongst individuals, but I mean, between these broad categories of people, like the gifted athlete for whom it all just falls into place versus someone who's not so. And as a flow on discussion, I suppose, it's interesting because your experience of lifting, you kind of grew up in lifting with Anthony, who is very talented, who improved very quickly, and you just did not improve at that rate. And that's just life. That's nothing that you did wrong. I suppose, unless you want to tell me otherwise. And it can be challenging. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear about your perspective on this, and why is it difficult for some people, and how do you approach it? When you've got someone who's not so genetically talented and they tell you that they want to be the Australian champion, how do you approach this?
Make everyone acutely aware, particularly if they're trying to be high level, that genetics is an important factor. And I'll give them examples, which obviously Anthony's a very good one. There's other examples out there. Like the bodybuilding sphere is a funny one, right? Because it's like you got your Ronnie Colemans and your Arnolds, and it's like most people will never look like that. No matter how much drugs they do, no matter what perfect training, they can have every facet of performance on point, and they won't look anything like that. So, again, goes back to communication and managing expectations with clients. Be like, so hypothetically, say a client wants to win the 83s in the IPF. I'm like, all right, how about we total 600 first? Yeah, so it's like you got to manage their expectations through shorter term goals, and not to say they never will be, because some people can surprise you and they can bring us more than you expect, and also they're paying you to achieve that goal, so you're going to do everything in your power to help them, get closer at least to that end goal. But yeah, definitely managing expectations with athletes, but then at the same time, you can have that conversation with an athlete to be like, hey, I think you have the genetics or the ability. I have this conversation all the time with Tony, because the guy has good genetics. He has the potential. And so keeping him motivated to train all year round is probably the most difficult thing with training someone high level like Tony, is the keeping him motivated is the biggest, so it's like, I'd be like, hey, just reminding him that it's like, you have the potential to go a long way in this sport if you do the right things throughout the year, on a, at least 80% basis, right? But obviously 100% can be dangerous, and we can transition into that conversation at some point. But yeah, I think it's communication, managing expectations.
And is your approach different? Do you I mean, it's pretty obvious, man, about someone's talent. Like you said, sometimes people can surprise you, but within a couple of weeks, you can just almost tell someone's ability. I'll give you an example, and for the listeners as well. I mean, we see it all the time at the gym, but I've got someone in my mind who started the gym recently, who grew up doing gymnastics and is just an athlete. He's just an athlete, never done a barbell lift before. And within 3 sessions is outlifting other people who have been in the gym for 6 months. And it's not that those people that have been in the gym for 6 months have done anything wrong. They're doing everything right. They're following the program. They're doing what we tell them to do. The technique's improving. But this person who's been in the gym for 3 weeks has better technique, is lifting heavier weights, and is, for all intents and purposes, a better lifter in, a tenth of the time, or in 5% of the time. And so you can tell pretty quick. And I know personally my approach is different when I identify these kind of people. But I'd be curious to hear what your approach is like when you identify someone who's really talented early on, and if you identify someone who's not so talented or just won't improve the way that maybe others can.
Yeah, again, it's just like having that conversation, and yeah, we've all seen them. I mean, you look at like currently, you look at all the like best athletes, or the majority of them, most of which were already pretty strong, like in their first comp.
Mm.
Like they'll like total like 600 plus in their first comp. Man, like people have to work years to total 600, just 600. And then 700, which is like, I'm trying to achieve 700. And I started at like 450. So it's like I've come a long way to get this strong. And, we can talk about the fact that we're not saying you can't get strong, but some people can get strong a lot faster with less issues. So everyone can get strong relative to their weight class. Like, I think that's a really important thing to note, is that I mean, if you're benching 100 kilos as a male, you're already stronger than the majority of mankind. And we tend to forget that because we compare ourselves to the ones at gym or social media. Imagine being these kids growing up now, like these 10-year-old kids, and they're watching someone deadlift 500, and they're like, what the hell? But at the same time, that's why these kids are getting so much stronger earlier, is that their goals are set so much earlier because they're seeing it. Like when I first saw a 220 deadlift for a double, I was in awe, like my mouth, like, because I
I
was
can't
like
believe it's
18
possible.
and I had never seen someone that strong before. It was just some generic gym bro guy who was like in his early 20s and he could deadlift 220, right? And, at the time I was like, wow, it's crazy. I would love to be able to do that. So that was what motivated. Imagine like these kids seeing what people are capable of now, and you just get to see everything. Like there's no hiding the high level athletes.
Hmm.
They're viral and they're everywhere on social media in particular. So the standard of lifting is so much higher at a younger age now, which is I think one of the reasons, outside of obviously the fact that coaching's getting better, programming, knowledge about nutrition, all these facets of performance are also better, but also the fact that people start earlier and their goal setting is higher because they're like 220 deadlift is not impressive to them anymore because they've seen dudes do 400 and 500. So it's definitely that's developing like the progress that we're seeing out of these kids as well, or young men and women, I should say. What was the original question you were saying?
Just that. Oh yeah, like your approach to lifters who might be more talented versus who might not be as talented, and you've mentioned having those conversations early and managing expectations, and but I guess I wanted to know, like, do the programs look different? Like, are you giving people more or less volume because you identify quickly that they can tolerate it or not? I mean, I presume so, of course, but I'd be curious to hear like your actual application.
Yeah, I definitely think it's very specific for them in order to be able to say hypothetically if it's powerlifting. You'll quickly start talking about maybe weight class comparison to most other people that you'll be like, don't worry about weight class. Let's just get stronger, have a good day, try to get a 9 for 9 performance. So your application in expectations are different to say someone who's a bit more, has a lot more potential, I guess. And they're far between in saying that though. Like it's, the time that we've been coaching, you probably could count in one hand how many people you've seen that have that perfect level of like genetics and motivation. So they've got like the combination that is like key for becoming a high level athlete quite quickly. You got some people who you do it over a longer period of time, but the ones that are genetically gifted, for sure, like application of like being more specific for them, being more specific about what competitions you're going to do and the experience they're going to get. So you start looking at bigger competitions for them. You're more likely to put them into a nationals or potentially even an international event, whether that's, a Commonwealth versus like worlds or whatever that is. So yeah, it's a good example of that was Ashta last year for team champs, where I put technically beginner into team champs, but I recognized the potential he had for his ability to perform under pressure. I knew he could handle that moment, and he handled it wonderfully. And he, PB'd his total. We just didn't have enough time to beat Remy or whoever it was that he was versing, right? He went on to, total close to what Remy did like 6 months later. So it was just a little bit short on time. But he's a good example of someone who I did that for because he had the potential.
For sure. And I think that one thing that stands out to me in that answer there is recognizing powerlifting as a sport as much as it is training. Like you kind of mentioned that with Asher, who lifted at team champs, that he would handle the pressure of competition, and it's a very competition specific kind of approach. One thing you also mentioned was about like considering the experience that they're going to get, and what I thought about was the fact that someone who doesn't quite have the potential or isn't, gifted, I suppose, having the conversation. Well, one thing that I find myself doing is having the conversation with them about what they even want to get out of this sport. Like, what benefit do you get from it? Is it the social thing? Do you feel fulfilled when you hit PBs? Is it you want to give back? I don't know, whatever it might be, but there are certain things you can get from this sport. One of those things that you probably won't be able to get is the experience of winning big competitions and having that. Like, that's just not going to be in your future potentially. Whereas when someone is talented, that is a conversation. It's like, if you want, this is an option. Like, you have the option of winning a nationals one day. It's an option. You don't have to do it. Nobody's making you. But if you want to, you could. And if you want to get there, you're going to have to train a bit harder. But it's just an option for you. That it's not an option for a lot of other people. They don't even get the choice. There are people that are so, not desperate's not the right word, but would be so desperate to one day win a nationals, but it's not even like in their, like it's not in their future. And there are other people for whom it's literally the ball's in your court, dude. Like, you are so good at this, and if you really wanted to lock in, you can push towards winning a nationals in the next couple of years. And so those are conversations that I know that I'm having.
Yeah, and it's like never say never for an athlete, because you see these athletes who just stay in the game longer than everyone else and just keep progressing, and or go into a division that they can win.
True.
Whether it's maybe they'll never win an open division, but maybe they will win a masters division. So there is that element of like never say never, because you can get strong as someone who doesn't maybe have the perfect genetics. It just takes longer. But yeah, if you've got the attrition and motivation over time, then doesn't mean you can't eventually like get the chocolates per se, comparison to someone who's a bit more talented. And as you allude to, it's like they have to make that decision, and usually they do, right? You got someone hypothetically who's really high level, then you will be a little bit harder on them as well. So it's like, oh, they missed a session, or they were hungover, or it's like, well, if you missed this, you missed this session, this session, this session, and that felt like shit. Where it's like, well, there's correlations here as to why that happens, and you'll point that out to them. Versus someone who just comes to the gym, wants to get stronger and be healthy. I'm not going to call them out for missing a session here and there. So managing how hard you are on individuals is going to be specific to how, I guess, like what they want to achieve.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned, or we were talking about, some people just are born strong and they get to that 600 total in their first comp. The first example I thought of as you were talking about that was, I think Taylor Atwood in his first ever powerlifting competition out of high school benched 170, and
Wow.
it's just insane. I mean, now he benches like 225 and stuff, 225 kilos, not pounds. And I don't know if I'll ever bench 170 no matter how freaking hard I try. So some people just have it, some people they don't.
Yeah.
One thing you also said is that everyone can get strong. And I love that you said that everyone can get strong. And the way you said it, even like, the way you said it, I really felt it. I really felt like you meant that. And that's something that you've really come to believe is like a core principle. Is that fair to say?
100%. Yeah.
And that, yeah, go
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, look, I don't really, obviously I've already expanded on it, but I think it was an important thing to note, because it's, obviously we're talking about like genetics and high level athletes, but it's like, yeah, like we all can get strong. I hope that I'm a role model for some people. Like I said, I'm very open about the fact that when I started powerlifting, I was totally like 400 and something, you know. So it's like I started down the bottom for a male at 80 kilos. Like that's a pretty low total. But here I am totaling, you know, in the mid 600s and with eyes on 700. It's like, so, and most people will never total 700, you know. So, or most people will not bench 170, as you've alluded to. I'm so close, bro. 165 I hit.
Oh, awesome! That's freaking huge. Holy shit.
I'm so close. I benched 162 at the recent nationals, but ended it at 90 kilos as well, which was nice. Where I benched 165 when I was at 100 kilos.
Okay.
So it was good to bench like, you know, that equivalent weight at a much lighter weight, body weight that is. But yeah,
I
it's
hope you
funny how
bench.
like we all have those little like goals and side quests.
I hope the first time that you bench 170, you don't do it in a meet and you do it in the gym, so you can load 3 reds.
Yeah, I know it's so true, man. Like, that's like me for deadlifts. Like, fucking, you got to load 275 to do the 5 reds. Yeah, same thing with the bench. Is so true that again, it's like such a culty thing in powerlifting, right? Like the 3 reds, and you know, or in the gym bro world, it's your 4 blues, your
Your
three
blues,
blues, your
yeah.
five.
Do you think it
You know,
actually works in your favor a little bit that you your experience as a strength athlete and that you didn't win a nationals and you're not this you're not the strongest guy around?
100%. I had to learn a lot faster than hypothetically other coaches or other people because I had problems. Like, so people always view problems and pain as a negative thing. And of course, no one wants to be in pain, but you learn the most about yourself from pain. So you got to utilize that. And, you're forced to figure out a problem. And then you have more experience and knowledge to be able to apply that problem for other people. And because I've come across these issues historically, even in my beginning of my career, it definitely forced me to learn and understand the body to another level that, most people don't have because they're not trying to be a coach or they're not trying to be like an athlete to I guess, a higher level, right? Like I'm trying to be a higher level athlete, despite the fact I have no illusion about being the strongest person. It's still the love for the game is still there. Like that's like it's just and we love it. That's why we do it. Like you wouldn't do it if you didn't love it because the discomfort you have to deal with at times, the amount of hours you have to spend just warming up and training and SPD days and obviously going to comps and paying for the equipment and not everyone has like a heap of money, but yet they pour so much time, energy, and money into this sport, which is really, really cool. And I think it's healthy for people, but to have a hobby and have something to strive towards. That's something I quickly learnt about myself is I have to find challenges. It's definitely why I did bodybuilding because I wanted to challenge myself. Um, I tend to like when during COVID, it was a funny story, but all of a sudden I had all this free time, like when COVID kicked in. And then within a month's time, I was busy. And I was like, yeah, like I don't have to actually physically be at work and yet I'm busy. And I just realized that about myself that I'll fill that time
Hmm.
and I'll find the adversity and things to like the puzzles to work through. And, I very much view strength training like that. It's essentially, it's like a puzzle that we're working on, um, fixing patterns and we're looking at, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Not patterns, but what it takes to get strong and continually to progress from that point. So we're constantly trying to work that out, and because everyone's different, everyone's problems are different. Yeah, it's unique, and that's the love for the game.
Do you think it's necessary to be strong to become a powerlifting coach or to be a successful powerlifting coach? How necessary is it to have gone through it?
No, I definitely do not think you need to be strong to be a coach, and I mean that's pretty evident across the board. You see a lot of coaches; they're not usually the best athlete or the strongest athlete, I should say. but they make great coaches because they have great perspective. They look at the right things. They're continually learning and applying. So the short answer definitely would be like, no, you do not have to be strong to be a good coach. But I do think it's important to have done the sport that you're doing. I don't like AFL, for example. I can't see someone who's never played AFL coach AFL.
Hmm. It
But for
sounds so
me,
obvious when you say that. Yeah.
I just think there's things you could never learn or understand through a book or a study. There's so much anecdotal evidence that we come across and learn through our journey that then we can apply for people and clients that come and go, through the coaches, that someone who didn't do the thing will never understand or learn. But yeah, you definitely don't have to be the best in order to be a coach. And it's very easy to be a coach when you're really strong, because obviously you get clients regardless because you are strong. Um, and like I've had to, I guess, work through that in the sense that I wasn't the strongest coach, but I still was able to build up a clientele basis, through whether that's the experience, word of mouth, like with the results given to clients, so it can be done. If the coaches out there who are aspiring, to become a coach or start a gym or whatever it is, like, it's just baby steps and continually just keep working towards it.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, being a successful lifter and being strong helps you garner authority. I think that's um, the first thing, because you've got a what's it called, like a proof. There's a proof right there, right in front of you, that this person knows what they're talking about. It's much easier to garner authority. And so when you don't have that by default, you have to garner that authority and that respect by, as you said, results, positive reviews, word of mouth. And I think you actually learn different things when you go through it that way, um, because you can't just lean on, good genetics or your actual lifting. You actually have to be a good coach in order to get that respect and authority. And you mentioned earlier about the love of the game, which I thought was an interesting point of discussion. You've been in it for a long time, as you said. 10 years, coming on 10 years of coaching. You and I have seen so many people come and go as coaches and athletes. I'd almost love to, if you and I look through the, PA Nationals list from 2017 or 18, we would see so many names there where we're like, whatever happened to them? Whatever happened to them? Like, there'd be so many people whose names we'd recognize, but when you think about it, you're like, I haven't seen them actually. I don't know what they're doing, whether they're coaches or athletes or whatever it might be. What do you think it's been for you that has kept you in it so long, and why is it that you think that you're, still going, but also going with a lot of passion that you have now?
Yeah, it's passionate for sure. Like, you got to be passionate in order to do it for this long, and you pretty much it weeds out anyone who isn't. Um, Look, ultimately, I always say this to clients or anyone I'm talking to about training is I will always train. I won't always be a powerlifter. There's, a point in, I think, our careers where we've got to, like, I guess, take a step back because of whether it's injury or, whether you fall out of love with the sport, or, there's many reasons as to why someone will stop, but I'll never stop actually training. So I definitely recognize the benefit of training in terms of all things health. And that's mental health, that's physical health. That is just like, I could give you 20 benefits of doing training of some degree, whether that's squat, bench, and deadlift. There's 20 other benefits than getting strong. So that's definitely for me, like, what's kept me very motivated is the fact that I have recognized how important training is to me in my life. And then also how important it is to my clients and the community that I've built. I had that decision I could have made where Anthony decided to step away from the gym. I could have closed Apex at that point, but I was like, there's no way that I'm going to, like, throw away this community off the back of, just because my partner didn't want to do it anymore. So it's, that's like why I would say I'm still passionate about it, and the community and the benefits outside of powerlifting for sure. And I would say this is why I've stayed in powerlifting is I recognize that powerlifting makes me train hard.
Mm.
So before I did powerlifting, I would squat like once a month because I hated the DOMs.
You had DOMs because
Where
you're doing it once a month, man.
man, it was brutal. And then but I was like deadlifting and dumbbell pressing like every week, but I just hated squats. But then once I had to be on the platform, I started squatting every week and my consistency went through the roof, across the board. So I definitely recognized that it keeps me training hard. And as a coach, I'm very acutely aware of you need to train hard, like in order to get progression and results. And, a role model for me was Stan Efferding. And he said this best. He's like, he went and trained with all the best bodybuilders, powerlifters through his peak when he was the best, or he was the strongest pro card bodybuilder at that given time. And I think still one of the strongest for getting his pro card. And so he got the opportunity to work with a lot of high end coaches, a lot of high end athletes. And the biggest correlation, despite the fact they were all on different programming, all doing different things, was they all trained hard. That was the correlation he found across the board. And so that's really stuck with me that, you can do whatever program or work with whoever, but training hard is going to be the difference in results or not. And powerlifting makes me train hard. So I really respect it for that reason, and probably what keeps me so motivated to continue to do this for.
That's an awesome insight. I mean, I don't know if you've seen Stan Efferding. I mean, of course you have because you're a big fan of him. He has like this series on YouTube where he just talks, I think he calls them Rhino Rants. And
Yeah.
one thing that really freaking stood out to me the first time I heard Stan Efferding, this is for the viewers who don't know who this is. So as Tyler said, one of the greatest hybrid bodybuilder powerlifters of all time. I think he's squatted like 850 pounds and he's 120 kilos freaking ripped. And he just looks like an absolute musclehead, obviously. But he's so freaking eloquent. Like he'll do these rhino rants where he talks to the camera for 20 minutes straight, no umming and ahhing, details a perfect story, fully articulates this idea. There's one where he talks about like health consequences, and he tells like a story about like a remote village in like Papua New Guinea or something. I forget exactly the details. I remember it because it stood out to me. I was like, holy shit, this guy is freaking smart.
Yeah, and he was like early days, like really big on nutrition, sodium intake. Remember that, what was it, the vertical diet that he was really big on? And it's probably maybe one of the reasons why I actually like, I guess, consumed his content, because I actually haven't watched Stan Efferding for many years. This is early on in my career when I did watch his YouTube clips. But yeah, you're right. He was very eloquent. He had a lot of wisdom because he'd worked with so many people. He'd been a professional in 2 different sports. He was also a super successful businessman. So he was very talented in many aspects. He was like, I would say, he wasn't even the best bodybuilder. Like, I actually didn't think his physique was that crazy, or it was nothing like, say, Ronnie Coleman's or whatnot. But he was so talented at so many things that it was so interesting to me. And so he was definitely like a role model early days, and made me start thinking about like, oh, nutrition and sodium. I had no idea that, sodium had such a important factor into one's performance. Like, you don't realize how, like, if you don't have sodium, your muscles do not work. It is kind of crazy. And if you like ever have cut sodium out of your diet and then tried to lift heavy, you're going to learn the hard way, like I did. I did this stupid ass cut for one of your comps. Actually, it was at.
You said it like
It
it was
was
my
like,
fault. What are your comps? Fuck you, man.
yeah, one of your comps was your fault. Nah, I was just trying to make weight, and I was like practicing making weight, and I cut way too much, and I did it through cutting sodium because I knew that I'd cut water retention. Clearly, 2 hour weigh-ins, I'm not going to get that sodium back. Man, I felt so much weaker. I nearly missed all my openers. Like, it was crazy, like how weak I felt. So I learned the hard way, with the sodium and how its importance with obviously potassium and other electrolytes and things like that. But yeah, going back to what we're saying is, like Stan Efferding was definitely a very influential person for me.
Sticking at training is, I'm not going to say easy, as you said. There's always going to be fluctuations in motivation, but it's a constant in your life, clearly. Like, you've been doing it for so long now, you couldn't even envision a life without it. When you get someone that's new in the gym, they walk in, they want to dabble in strength training, they've gone to the gym a few times with their friends. Objectively, they're very weak, very beginner. What kind of things are you doing or are you applying to help someone not only improve it, obviously in the short term, but are you already thinking about their long-term development, like from that early of a stage where you're thinking, how can I integrate them in the community? How can I make them feel like this is part of their life so that they stick at it? Or maybe you get someone that comes in and they've been in and out of gyms. They tried F45, they lasted 3 weeks. They tried this other gym, they lasted 2 months, and they've come to you guys going, well, my friend said this was good, I thought I'll give it a go. Are you very conscious of, like, I don't want this to be a fad for this person? How can I make this a long-term commitment for them? And if you are, like, what kind of things are you doing to kind of help them stick?
Yeah, I think introducing them to other members, like, so that way they're not just coming in with their headphones on and training. So really, it's just integrating them into the community would be probably the biggest reason why someone who's just doing generic strength training is going to stay or not. Because, like, there's many gyms out there. There's a lot of places that have good equipment. Like, we're blessed in this country to have such a good gym culture, with some really, really good facilities and also communities. And so, community introducing them to the community would definitely be the difference. Obviously, making them feel welcome is like a big one. So, introducing to all the coaches and just obviously myself and Brooke, and then obviously showing them what they're capable of. It's definitely living vicariously through our clients is one of my favorite things we get to do. Like, we get paid to help people. Like, how cool is that? Most people have to work some job they probably would rather not be doing, or be doing a different role within that career, where we get to help people for a living and we get to live vicariously through them when they get to achieve, whether it's like a big squat, bench, deadlifts, whatever it is, or even just pain-free lifting, like just that happiness and joy that it brings people is an awesome benefit to being a strength coach.
Well said, man. Well said. Yes, we get to hang out in the gym. We don't have real jobs. We just bum around and and load plates and film content on Instagram. It's good fun. Sometimes we do little interviews and conversations. Dude, it's
Which
been
we
awesome to
love to
chat.
do.
What's that?
Which we love to do anyway.
Which we love to do. Exactly right. Yeah. Dude, it's been awesome to chat. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some upcoming projects for you and Apex. I know you've got the Apex Alliance comp coming up with
Yes.
APA. I know you're going to Sydney this week. What else kind of stuff's going on with you and with Apex? And tell us a little bit about these little events that are coming up. Maybe we start with SPD Cup.
Yes, so why not? First and foremost, the SPD Cup, which is in 5 days' time, that came up fast as fuck. I can swear in here, right? I think I have the whole time. It's pretty.
I think by the time this comes out, it might have actually passed, to be honest. So, but it may have already passed. It'll be a little bit delayed, but we can talk about it anyway.
Yeah, sure. Well, we'll see how obviously all the athletes go, but it's a very exciting event. Generally speaking, we have to sort of explain the event to people because it's not a very typical powerlifting event. Basically, to summarize for those who don't know, you have to beat the current APA record in your weight division by a margin that's greater than everyone else beating their records in whatever given weight division they are. Obviously separated by gender. So it's male and female, and the best male is the one who beats the record by the biggest percentage. Tony, obviously, as you alluded to with Alex, he's one of the favorites. And really, it is in his ball court a little bit, where it's like, if you execute, your squat, bench, and deadlifts, you're a good chance. Obviously it comes down to the other athletes, and maybe there's an athlete or two that have progressed more than people expect. So I'm very curious to see that. I know there's a lot of hype for Canna, for example. I'm so unfortunate that Joshua's not going to be there. Tatuk.
To go up. Mhm.
I can't say his last name, but he was looking like an absolute beast a few months ago. So there's unfortunately he's not there, but there's some exciting athletes who have either done last year's or this is their first year. As everyone, well, a lot of people know, Tony's been in the game for a while, and it's very exciting to see him on the platform. What like the level of showmanship he had at your team champs comp when he's coming out for his 405 squat, the biggest squat in the country, and he's like,
Yeah, that was freaking awesome,
man,
man.
I can't get over that moment. I was like, what made you think to do that? Like,
It was because the freaking room was loud as hell, man. That place was like erupting.
I know. It was so like exciting and fun for us, and how good that he got the squat as well under all that pressure as well. It's not particularly easy. But yeah, very excited to see what Tony can pull together, and as well like see how all the athletes go. And I'm keen. I'm glad that I get to be up there for it as well. You're
Well,
obviously going to be there.
yeah, I'll be there. Will you just be coaching him on your own, or you have a little bit of help?
Just coaching on my own,
Yep.
except I will have Brooke with me. More so in case there's any issues with his body. Not to say like touch wood, obviously that all things go to plan, but it's good having her expertise there with me for my athletes. And it's kind of cool that we get to sort of be a little like a team when we go to these events, whether it's international. Last year for last it was earlier this year for no, it was last year for Libby at Worlds, and or versus nationals, and or like the SVD Cup. So that's the one up and coming. Obviously, this may come out after that event, so we'll see how things fall into place. I think you put Tony down as coming third, and Alex put him down coming as first in terms of
Yeah, I can't remember which way
expectations.
around it was, honestly. Like I just said stuff, so it could have been the other way around as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be arrogant to say, yeah, he's going to win, but I do think he'll be top three.
Yeah,
Like that's what as far as I'll say. After that, we do have literally the next weekends. We have the Apex Alliance 3, which is fully sold out. So really excited to run that IPF comp for APA, and
yeah. I think
then
we've got.
later this year.
I think from TSF we got about 8 or 9 people doing it. Actually, we're sending a big
Oh,
group.
awesome! Amazing. Yep. And then, so I guess I'll definitely see the whole crew there. And then later in the year, we have the APL meet, which is in December 7th. So it's about 5 weeks after the APA comp. And that has nearly 50 athletes in that. So very exciting to finish off the year with that event. But yeah, so a few events coming up. So it's going to be some busy weekends. It's also my birthday on Wednesday. So I'll be celebrating that with you guys in Sydney, I guess.
Cool, man. Happy birthday. I'll make sure to say so.
And that's fine. You don't have to. Big 32, brother. 32 young.
Maybe we'll get you a small gift or something. Maybe Tony
Uh,
can get you a gift by winning.
yeah, I was like, yeah, if Tony wins, I'll be happy enough for that. Yeah, that'd be good.
Cool, man. Sounds like an exciting couple of months. It's always busy at this time of year. Lots of comps going on. I feel like there's a comp going on like every week for us. And I've like you said, this weekend Sydney, next weekend I'm going to the weekend after that is obviously Apex comp, and then there's a couple of comps in the middle of November that I've got to get to. So it's always busy, but that's awesome, man. It's been a great conversation. Shared some good wisdoms and a lot of experience. Like all the experiences that you had has been very invaluable. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value and a lot of benefit from hearing what you've had to say and some of your stories and insights. It's been awesome. So yeah, I appreciate you making the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll be look forward to having you on our potty as well, which obviously is coming back to life. We've actually done about 28 episodes back in like 2019, 2018, 2019 period. So this will be the reemergence of the straight cast.
Cool. I'm glad. I feel like I've motivated you to get back on it.
Yeah, a few people. Alex is on my back. He's like, "When are you doing it, bro?" Like, and
Cool.
I've got a few people. Even I know, and like it's crazy because I have like all this fucking knowledge, and I'm like, why? Like, I love to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
all these thoughts.
I love to talk to interesting people and also learn something from people as well. So yeah, so if you're interested in podcasts, we'll be YouTube, Spotify, the Strength Cast. You can listen to our old episodes, which are actually not bad. I started listening to a few when I was thinking about restarting the podcast, and I was like, oh, this is actually not that bad. Like considering we
Not
had
that
no idea
bad,
what.
everyone. That's the tagline. Listen to the strength art. It's not that bad.
It's actually like it's like it's sometimes it's hard to listen to
Of
yourself
course, yeah, it's
or
a bit
your
cringe.
own podcast, but it's like, oh, this is it's good, like go listen to that. But we're going to be creating new content and having some exciting guests on, so that's really exciting. And then outside of that, obviously, my thing is strength coaching, and if you're interested in that, obviously come down to Apex or just DM me, or book a consultation via our website. um or just come compete at one of our events.
Yep, awesome. I mean, you guys do run good events, and across federations as well. So there's always an option. There's always something that you can do. So, yeah, like I said, thanks for your time. All of Tyler's information will be in the show notes anyway, so people can find you. I mean, most people listening to this will probably know one or both of us anyway, so it shouldn't be too hard. But yeah, like I said, thanks for making the time, man.
Thank you, brother.
Cool.
Always a pleasure.